Hey guys, Kelade here, back with another commentary video, this time on Mythic Star Augur Etraeus. For this boss, before you guys even ask, I am using a nameplate called BD nameplates, and it's what's going to really help with Grand Conjunction, and it's also what's showing my raid members' names like that. For this fight, Star Augur, he does parry, so you do want to be behind him as far as you can, but for the next mechanic, I do have to stand right here, a little bit almost on, but kind of a little bit to the left of that blue marker. So Grand Conjunction is the new mechanic that's happens for this fight for Mythic. He randomly puts across your raid members' names, a debuff, and you want to match up with somebody else on your raid that has the exact same debuff. If you guys fail this, whether you don't match the debuff or you run into somebody with a different debuff, you'll do a raid-wide AoE, and you guys will all get a debuff that you eventually will just wipe because you'll be taking extra damage. So, right, so I do want to get behind this guy as far as I can because he does parry, and having your battle cry parried, having your bloodthirst parrying a battle cry does make for a pretty bad time. So for here, right here, you see, I'm connected to this guy over here with a green, and that's what the BD nameplate does. Instead of having to actually look at the sigil and look at some colors, it'll just make it so everybody that has the same sigil as you is just covered in green essentially, and everybody that doesn't is going to be covered in red. So for this part of the fight, for the Frigid Novas, we do all stack up, two groups, one on the left and one on the right side. And generally, you want to use for your commanding shout, you do want to use it for the icy injections. Since we have two warriors, he's going to use his for these, and I'll use mine for the next set of icy injections. So for this part of the fight, it really just is, doing the crank injunctions correctly, and also making sure you drop your icy injections outside. Because once your icing instruction ends, you guys see those little things pulsing on the outer edges of the room, those little frost spheres. That's what gets dropped at the end of your icy injections. So for here, I mean, for DPS wise, for a melee DPS, generally pretty good, right? You just keep hitting the boss. Going through a rotation, burst out as much as DPS as you can. I will get an icy injection in this fight. What's going to happen for that as a Fury Warrior, or as a warrior in general, since we have Heroic Leap, you're able to stay on the boss a little bit longer, and a few seconds before your debuffs, about to be finished, you want to leap out to the edge. You do want to give your range some time when you're leaping, so that way you're not, instantly like leaping on them and dropping the stacks, because the sphere, it doesn't pulse any damage now, but once this debuff is gone and the pulse is on the ground, it'll do a lot of AoE damage around it. So I do get pretty low here, even though I pop in rage regeneration, and that's the thing. You always want to pop your personal cooldowns if you can for those ice injections, and also get GS too just in case. So once you reach 60%, you're gonna go into the stage 3, and this is when our group lusts, and I think this is when most groups lust. So for this, you do want to have your cooldowns line up here because when you're phasing into a phase, he does do like a little RP, so you have time to channel your draft, so that way you don't have to cancel your draft early because you got fel injections or anything like that. This part of the fight is pretty similar to Heroic and Mythic. You get fel injections and you have to drop them on the ground, but you guys will see on the upper left, you guys see that meteor falling on the ground, and that's going to leave fel injections all over the ground, and it's indicated by the green circles that you guys see right here on the bottom left of the screen above my camera. So if you get the fel injection debuff, you ideally want to do what that priest is doing on the left. You drop it onto the circle because that meteor is going to make that place covered in the fel injection debuffs anyways. So for us, and I think for most groups, you're gonna do this encounter with two fel novas. And of course, on the fel novas, you want to leap out to the edges as far as you can because the further are you away from the middle, the less damage you take. And of course, you want to take as little damage as possible. And it is very easy for Fury Warriors or Warriors in general, just because we can leap and instantly charge back in. And as big thing is you also have to remember that Grand Conjunction keeps happening regardless of the phase that you're in, right? So Grand Conjunction in this fight gets harder and harder because we're running more and more out of room due to all that fel that's on the ground. Because stepping over that ground, you're going to take a lot of damage, and you want to avoid walking over that as much as possible. Right, so generally warriors are able to get a few more GCDs in than most. For this, the second Fel Nova is followed by a Grand Conjunction really tightly. So as a warrior, you want to charge back in and then try to run around the boss as much as you can. Because the other melee, the slower melee, they're going to be on route to the boss. You want them to, not be stopped just because you're standing right in the front of them on the boss. right? So we have the luxury of charging back in. So you just want to go around a little bit. This boss is going to phase in like 3% more at 30%. Ideally, you want to phase him before the next Grand Conjunction comes out because of what I mentioned about just not having the real estate to continue the fight. It gets really dicey to get another Grand Conjunction in this phase. So luckily, we are able to push him to the next part of the fight. For this part of the fight, we have one Assassination Rogue that has the Execute Bracers, and we have two Fury Warriors. For the first ad, we do have everybody except the Assassination Rogue stay on the boss, so he can keep executing. On the second ad, for me as a Fury Warrior, I go and I stack Juggernaut stacks on the boss, and then the Rogue goes and DPSs the ad. As you guys can see, that beam that came through the middle a few seconds ago, that's also a new mechanic that's in the fight. It's called World Devouring Force, and essentially, if you're in that beam, you're dead, unless you get some kind of immunity like spell warding that I'll get at the end of the fight. Right here, Witness the Void, it's exactly the same as Mythic and Heroic. Not sure if it's an LFR or not, but you can immune the fear with a Berserker Rage. So as a warrior, you're able to immune one Witness of Void from every ad. So I can avoid the first Witness ad from the first ad, and I can avoid the first Witness Void from the second ad also. Of course, for the second one, you want to turn around so you don't get feared. So now that he's dead, the first ad is dead, my job is now to just stay on the boss once we get into execute phase and just stack as many Juggernaut stacks as I can. It is it is pretty difficult because one is you're worried about dropping Juggernaut stacks, and two is you gotta do all the mechanics. And since you're stacking Juggernauts on the boss, you're in the middle of the room, and that World Devouring Force always goes through the middle of the room. So you have to be really careful and keeping up with your timers, because if you aren't paying attention, you will die, right? Because that beam is coming through the middle right where you're standing. So right here, the thing that should not be spawned that add that fears, right? So I know you see my Berserker rages up, and I do pop it to immune the fear. And luckily, I don't get a Grand Conjunction here. Of course, getting a Grand Conjunction here, you have to really time your executes correctly or hope that the other guy is coming. You guys can see on the left right there, that's what the eye looks like. It's like off in the distance in the sky, and it's humongous, right? It's like a little pretty lightly colored, tan colored eye hanging out in the sky. So we're getting closer, getting to 12% of the boss. I do kind of make a mistake later on this fight at the very, very end. I get to something like 45 or 46 Juggernaut stacks, and I use Draft of Souls. Kind of looking back at the logs, and I think this was a mistake. I think once you get to like this part in the fight, where where you're getting to the 30 stacks Juggernauts, I should have just kept executing. But that is definitely something that I could improve on from just looking at this fight right now. Luckily, Grand Conjunction happened there, and the guy was right next to me, so I didn't have to move much. I can kind of focus and stay executing on the boss. So the third ad spawns. We do ignore the ad, and of course, our prop pally spell wardings me here, so I don't die to the beam, and I can keep executing and finish off the boss. Just a little bit more, and there we go. And there's the kill. As always, feel free to subscribe to the channel to see more warrior content. Let me know down in the comments below what you guys thought of the commentary. Thanks for checking out the video, guys. See ya.